So, late summer, a lot of news.
Jeez.
Yeah, we've been like that. Is it the Snoopy cartoon where he's like pushing his face on the ground as he's walking?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's how we feel right now. There's been
it's
how
late
many
September, and I have reason to believe that this year will be better than the
better than the
last.
last?
God, let's hope.
Yeah.
Well, how many pieces of break? So Monday there was Rahul. There was Reyes bringing on Infinium. There was the late breaking Heineken FIFCO. I know
Mhm.
I'm missing some. There's like two other things that I'm not thinking of, right, Jay? What else broke?
Those were the big ones. The Heineken came in late,
Yeah.
and
I
was
like that Dolphins like, I don't want to have anything to do with US mainstream beer. Y'all can
Yeah.
have it. Y'all can have it and keep
Seriously.
it.
I mean, he's,
He's
you
right.
know.
He's not wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jen and I were joking about that. Like the synergy there is the portfolios don't overlap. And okay, so we're not growing in above premium, and if we don't want to grow in F&B too or mainstream, bring it on.
I believe they call that synergies, right? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so on a completely different note, you know what I was thinking? We should bring back typos for tatas, and instead, because we don't have many typos anymore, but when we curse on the pod, we should donate money to breast cancer.
I like that. Fucking A, let's do it. Um, you know, and so for those who don't know, we used to. I mean, this program did not age well, right? And it was, this was in the mid 2000 teens, and we had a thing called typos for tatas, which is I'm sure offensive to some people, but we would give to breast cancer research for every typo that was found in our newsletter. And we gave thousands of dollars, especially at the time when I was the main editor. And we rewound that program down for obvious reasons. One, well, my mother was the arbiter, so she got it every day, and she would, redline the typos and tell us how much we owed. She's 93 now, so she can't, she can't even be an unpaid intern like she was. But yeah, I'm all for that. We do need to have some sort of charity program, whatever it is, and a swear jar.
Yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
that Bud Light ad, swear jar?
Yeah. Cursing for cancer.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, that's better than typos for tatas. I think cursing for cancer is better, is a better branding idea. Keep in mind, times were different back then. Times were
Oh,
different.
actually, I don't think typos for Tata would get you in trouble today. I mean,
Well,
it's kind of a
well,
term
not
of
if
endearment,
not
you
if
know?
you led the brigade.
Right.
Yeah.
I hereby bless
Yes, I can't.
typos for
I
Tatas.
can't be the leader of the
Yeah.
typos.
There we go, right on time. He saved
There he
us
is.
from saying anything crazier.
Yep, there he is. Oh man, what a week! I am glad it's it's not even.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I know. I wish it were.
I just bounced on and heard what a week. And I mean it's crazy. It's what a week, it's what a month, it's what a friggin' year. I mean,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah,
Yes,
rocket ride.
absolutely. Absolutely.
it
How are y'all
is.
doing?
We are hanging in there by a thin thread. Uh, September's supposed to be slow. It has been nothing but not slow. And so, but we are so happy to have you back on the podcast as our recurring guest. We have Craig Purser, President and CEO of the National Beer Wholesalers Association. Craig, welcome to the Beer Net Radio podcast, where all your dreams come true. And what's shaking in Washington these days?
I'm telling you, we are currently about a week out from another fiscal cliff deadline, whatever you want to call it, about keeping the government open. There's a lot of posturing, as you can imagine. This has been an incredible year for posturing, with lots and lots of back and forth and concerns. As everybody, all of your watchers and listeners know, the end of the United States, the government's fiscal year is September 30. And so the Congress has got to have in place funding to fund all the various government operations. We've seen this show before. This year is a little different, like so many other things are. But that is always something that we've got our eye on as we watch these wheels of Congress and the government grind away.
Why
I will
can't
say,
we ever get these government shutdowns are so predictable? There's got to be a mechanism by which we can make this better. We don't want to get too much in the weeds on that, but
yeah, look, it's frustrating and it is difficult. I think sometimes that frustration and difficulty gets in the way of the fact that with all of the challenges of 2025, we had a significant policy victory just this summer as it relates to the passage of that landmark tax bill. And, obviously that's something that's really important to beer distributors. It's also important to small brewers and any other privately held business in the US. But to get permanency around taxes that allow these businesses to plan for their future is really important. So as frustrating as some of this other stuff is, we have to take a beat and we have to realize that lots and lots of times, yeah, there's meat and potatoes and there's dessert, but there's also a lot of vegetables, and you got to have a little bit of everything.
I'm not sure what goes where in that metaphor, but I wholeheartedly agree, Craig.
I'm telling you, we're laughing to keep from crying, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you, because we were talking about all the news that has broken in the last 2 days. The BI has a new chairman because Molson Coors has a new CEO, Rahul Goyal, which they announced Monday morning when I was dropping my children off at school, of course. Yeah, I think they planned that. Just kidding. I'm not that important. But I'm curious, what's your take?
So I met Raul with Gavin probably, I want to say it was right after we kind of were coming out of COVID. He joined us for a top-to-top dinner with NBWA's then officers. I did not know him before that dinner. He struck me as very engaging, as a very smart guy, and a guy that, is always thinking about the future. I think that was really important from his strategic perch. And clearly that's the direction that the board went. I think, the combination of somebody that's been in the building, that understands where all the things are that need to be done, together with, I don't know if you guys are hearing the same thing, but as I talk to distributors, they are also, real encouraged by the little bit more active role that David Coors seems to be playing as chairman of Molson Coors. And I think that distributors are taking some comfort and confidence in that combination that, Raul's the boss, he's the hired guy, he's going to be the one that's going to be leading the troops. And I think that's great, but I think there's a opportunity and an opportunity for some optimism as it relates to these folks moving forward. We're looking forward to working together. Obviously enjoyed working with Gavin and wish him nothing but the best, but we've had some opportunity to say goodbye to him. I saw him this summer when Miller Lite came to town celebrating their 50th anniversary, and it was just so good to see him in person and spend a little bit of time together.
Yeah,
I agree that there is something to be said, because a lot of times these public companies will get an outside hire, right, to bring in fresh blood and new blood. But there is something to be said about somebody who understands the regulatory environment in this industry. It is not CPG. It is different than that. And like you said, somebody who is close to David Coors and who can maybe flesh out that vision throughout the company. I'm bullish, and I think. He spoke at our summit 2 years ago, so we do have exposure, and we hope to have him back. So that's all I'll say.
That's right. I think that's exactly right. And there are leaders that show up in this industry that maybe they've not been in a public role, or they've been playing a different role, or they've been in another perch globally. I was talking to a group of people on Monday morning as the announcement was coming out, and I remember there was this guy that nobody knew, and nobody knew anything about it. It was as SAB was taking the wheel, and he showed up, and he had a lot of global experience. He had a thick accent that a lot of folks didn't understand. And Norman Adamy did a pretty darn good job likewise of leading the company. So between Norman to Tom to Gavin to now Raul, I think we're all optimistic.
Yeah, that's interesting. I will say he was also the architect of a lot of these newer partnerships and M&A, like with Coke and Fever Tree. So, and I think a lot of distributors want to see more of that, the a bigger approach to the string of pearls. A lot of them have called for a spirits RTD and more action and energy. And so I'm hoping he'll be very savvy and responsibly proactive in that manner.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the everything, Harry, that you've been talking about for years, the shakeup, the great confluence,
Mhm.
everything, blurred lines, all those analogies are coming true. And, just like we remain the National Beer Wholesalers Association, that's what we focus on. Beverage is a huge part of the ever expanding, kind of areas where our members are going. And being able to walk and chew gum, you guys have heard me use that analogy before, has never been more important. We've got to walk and we got to continue to tend to beer. We've got to continue to make that the priority. And I think distributors more than anybody understand that if they don't do that, no one will. But we've also got to be reacting and anticipating these marketplace changes, which is where the consumer wants to go also. It's, more and more, we've heard it before, two things can be true at once.
Oh, yeah.
It's not either or, it's both and.
Yeah, now more than ever. But, you mentioned where your constituency is literally going. I hope most of them are going to convention in less than 3 weeks in Vegas.
I,
Less than 3 weeks in Vegas.
Less than 3 weeks. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. There's still the best thing about Vegas and best thing about Caesar's Palace is there's
Yeah,
always more rooms.
yeah.
And so we are pleased. We are surprised. I'm surprised. This has been a tough year for the business. Full stop. No nice way to put it. But our numbers are up. Our distributor numbers are up. We're excited about the trade show. We're excited about the innovation showcase. The innovation showcase is something that we added as a bolt-on for early arrivals. And we've got over 600 people signed up on an NFL Sunday afternoon in Las Vegas to come to that showcase. I mean, hell, we had to move the room around because there's so much interest in this. And I think innovation and technology is part of what people are hungry for during difficult times. They're looking for greater efficiencies. They're making investments, not just in the brands that they distribute, but in the way they go to market. And that includes everything from technology, route accounting, AI, sales tools, warehouse, all the many and delivery, all the many and varied things that beer distributors do. And I think what we put together is a really good, think of it like a menu at a nice restaurant, Harry, not a fancy restaurant, but a nice restaurant where all the food goes together. Maybe I'm hungry. I don't know what the hell the deal.
You seem to be
You know?
talking about food a lot. It is true,
Yeah.
but I haven't eaten in 3 days, so I'm ready.
You look like it. You're starting to look like my skeleton back there.
I know.
No, but anyway, so Craig, what are going to be some of the big talking points for this from the stage? I'm sure category health is going to be one of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've got some kind of key takeaways, and I think just because of the business, category health is kind of an unspoken theme. It's just everywhere, and we're going to hear from a variety of voices around this. We're going to hear from the retailer's perspective. With Katie Smith from Walmart. We
Okay.
haven't heard from a Walmart speaker for a number of years. Obviously, the nation's largest brick and mortar retailer is super important to the beer category. We want to hear what she's got to share and what she's got to say. Jim Sabia obviously is going to present a supplier perspective. Constellation has just been a rocket ship with the Modelo franchise. Certainly 2025 has presented that brand and that brand family with some challenges. There's a lot of moving parts around all that. But nonetheless, I think Jim is one of the best marketers in the industry, is going to provide us a supplier perspective around all of that.
Jim is goated.
Also,
He's goated.
say it again. He's what?
He's goated.
Yes.
Greatest of all time. We can look back at the great AB marketers of the past and Miller Lite and all Coors Light, but as far as people who are still working in the industry, is there anybody better than Jim Sabia? I mean, the numbers don't lie. So That's
I
all.
think distributors, whether they've got the book of brands or not, are interested in what he has to say, and we're just excited about him joining us. We're also going to hear, from a panel of industry analysts and experts talking about the category and headwinds, and that's kind of going to be a key industry takeaway. We've got Nadine Sarwat, who, of course, famously coined the phrase marijuana moderation and GLP. Nick Modi, who yesterday just shared some brilliant kind of takeaway suggestions for the industry, ways that we can return to growth, also is going to be on that panel. We'll also have Mike Frank on that panel, who is the chair of the Beer First Initiative, which NBWA is leading. And indeed, as you guys reported this morning, we were real pleased with a meeting that was held earlier this week. We had over a dozen supplier marketers together for just a really good initial first session. And I will tell you guys, it exceeded my expectations. There was a great deal of engagement. I think everybody would given folks kind of some homework to get ready, and people brought their A game. It was a very successful conversation, and I'm hopeful the beginning of something really special. We're also going to have a kind of a finance and operations takeaway. We haven't popped this yet in the mail or digitally, but Cynthia Fisher, yes, that's Cynthia Fisher.
Yeah, okay.
Jim Cook is going to share her perspective on healthcare reform and what distributors can do to take control of a big cost to their business. Cynthia has been very outspoken in getting some reliefs and reforms advanced in the public arena. She talks about healthcare transparency. She talks about things like getting your healthcare and insurance decisions. And this is nothing against the important folks that do human resources, but get those decisions kicked upstairs into your C-suite. You want your CFO, you want your ownership, you want your controllers, you want the folks that are managing all the other costs of your business to be in on this. And I think she's going to have some dynamite suggestions of things that distributors can do to be more successful. We're also going to have a policy takeaway. Many people don't fully understand some of the economic value that has been unleashed or unlocked as it relates to the tax legislation. We're going to hear from our own Brian Cunningham, who's one of the association's leading lobbyists, Terry White, who has long time been on NBWA's board. He's an accountant by background, has some great insights into tax policy. And then Karen Coveton from Ippolito. She and Andy put out a note this summer that I think got a lot of people's attention, because like others that are looking at pass-through businesses, there's a great deal of economic value that has been that's unlocked by the making permanent these tax provisions. So really excited about those speakers. I mentioned a little bit about the Innovation Showcase. We've got a absolutely lights out trade show with over 250 exhibitors in 3 ballrooms. We are 99% sold out. If somebody's got a vendor or somebody they want on the floor, we can get them in. We may sell out in the next couple of days, but we're thrilled about that. 85 of those 250 exhibitors are new. So there's going to be some new products, new innovation. Of course, we're going to have beverage, and lots is talked about as it relates to hemp and THC, but we've got spirits, wine, non-alcohol, energy, all of those expansive and new beers that'll all be on the floor. And it's I just think there's this has been such a difficult year. There's that analogy again, they're hungry for more information. People want to go to a meeting and come back with some ideas of how they can do things better. We've got 20 different seminars that are going to be offered in kind of 5 different tracks, including industry trends, legal, management, operations, and sales and revenue, and a whole host of topics on future-proofing your business and how to enjoy or capture more revenue now. So we're real excited about what's on the list. And then, of course, on Tuesday afternoon, the minute that the show floor closes, and obviously, Jen, you're on the ground floor of this, making moves. I think it's the fourth year for
Fourth
this.
year. Yep.
It's going to be terrific. Maybe you tell me what we've got planned for making it.
Well, I'm glad that you asked, Craig. Yeah, no, I've been working on the show with Kim for 4 years now. We had a high water mark last year, more than 400 attendees. And, it started as a way to connect and elevate women in the industry, but now it's really more about leadership development and, like you said, future proofing and troubleshooting industry issues, right? And I'll share some of
Right.
our all-star lineup. I mean, this year we have Nick Rellis. Yes, that Nick Rellis, right? Now he's at Greater Software. He's helping demystify AI for our audience, helping with a much deeper understanding of how people can use that technology. We have the Gen Z whisperer, Amanda Edelman of The Edelman, right? Offering actionable data from her Gen Z lab that works with hundreds of people in that generation. And then we have industry all-stars like Sue McCollum, who needs no introduction, and top beer CMOs like Heineken USA CMO Allison Payne, Malika Montero, EVP of beer for Constellation. But then we threw in kind of a newer breath of fresh air. Not that the others aren't fantastic, but with Ray Bebuck of Hooray's Girl Beer, who's really kind of hilarious and a deaf newcomer and just a different way of marketing. And this panel will be tasked with really answering some of the difficult questions about how to market differently into the future to kind of hack their way through the current noise in every sense of the word. And that's really just the tip of the spear. I mean, we also have Nikki Byerly. She's an award-winning chief human resources officer. Now she's at LDF companies, but she's talking about the core and cutting-edge skills that people need to thrive in their businesses in 2030 and beyond. So it's really about, again, future proofing. And I'm hoping people will stick around for this show and we can top our numbers from last year. But that starts Tuesday afternoon, the 14th.
Yeah, and I tell you, the leadership group for Brew that helps, work with suppliers to put on making moves, and the Alliance for Women in Beer has just been lights out fantastic. I mean, I think as we've watched, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Jen, they've really taken leadership as it relates to helping identify ways to solve industry problems, and that's huge. And it's not just, I'll just be candid. It's not just for women.
No.
And I'm thrilled that Nick Rellis is playing such a key role. He's a great leader. Of course, he was the founder of Drizzly and, very, very tech savvy, very dialed in to the practical applications of AI, all of the things that I think folks are interested in, the backdrop of some really tough time for the business.
Yeah. On the subject of tough times, Craig, everyone's tired of hearing about bad news, but how do you strike that balance of acknowledging the reality without harping on it? And you're an amazing motivator. So what gets wholesalers excited in downtimes like these? Is it new products, new lanes? We talked a little bit about the innovation showcase, but what has been the spark you've seen in prior down periods to lift us?
You mean in my advancing age and time in the saddle? No,
Never.
Look, I think the thing that we talked about kind of as a touchstone weeks ago was we were, getting more purposeful around the agenda and the theme and how we're going to message. We identified three things, and they're difficult to do, but we said this needs to be the message, and our conversations need to be truthful. And that's where, Jordan, I think you just got to hit it. You got to address the elephant in the room. You got to say this is difficult. And I've known many of the families in this business for nearly 30 years. And you just got to be honest about it. You got to be truthful. You got to keep credibility intact by saying, yeah, this is different. But we also want to be smart. And being smart means that you're always trying to help others see something that they haven't seen. And some of that comes from people challenging each other and things like a convention. When you convene and you bring people together, that's a huge part of that. And then the final thing, and this is sometimes flies in the face of truthful and smart, is you want to be positive. And that's why, because at the end of the day, this is still a great business. The fundamentals of this business are terrific. We're going to have folks that come and go in this industry. And there's been a lot of leaders that have come and that have gone, but distributors, beer wholesalers, those are the consistent players in this industry. Those are the folks with, I've said this before, they're the elephants of the industry. They have memories that go back years and years and years. And so striking that balance, Jordan, and that goes to the content of the meeting and what we're trying to offer for folks, but it also goes in the way that we conduct ourselves. And so, like I said, I'm being honest about this. Times are difficult, but we are going to, I think, come together and come out of, half a week together with a lot more knowledge, a lot more insights. And I'm thinking, kind of a much needed, there's catharsis in some of these people seeing each other and reminding each other, that this is pretty special. And, we take a beat and we acknowledge that, and then we go home and we kick ass. Fourth quarter is going to be really important. When we look at this letter, this year, it has been rough. And, it's not unlike a football game. You can, the first three quarters have not been great. We need that fourth quarter to be strong.
And to be fair, I know that this is going to get everybody rolling their eyes. The weather has been terrible this year. Okay, can we just acknowledge it, please? The weather has really been terrible. I'm still not convinced this is a structural issue. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm really glad that this is the on year at NBWA, meaning it's the Vegas year where you have the trade show, because I think people are hungry to learn what is out there, what growth opportunities and what brands and products, and not just products to take in at your distributorship, but also how you streamline your organization on the other side with either AI software or new trucking or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm glad that this landed in 25 to be a Vegas year, because I think we need to get out there and kind of see what's out there to jumpstart this thing.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And, there are other explanations for part of this melees in which we're operating. The economy and some of the uncertainty, I talked about tax certainty. That's for folks, that are looking at this big picture and long term. Some of the frontline stuff is very difficult. There are, and what I've been encouraged by, and maybe this, I'm not going to talk about what we talked about at the meeting earlier in the week, but I was very pleased that people did not come with a list of explanations, or, as my wife would say, excuses. It was very solutions oriented, and I was encouraged by that. And I think I'm encouraged by that when I look at the lineup that we've got. We got to understand some of the challenges, but we don't need to dwell on them. We need to turn those challenges into opportunities.
Yeah. And, there are a whole lot of headwinds outside of the industry's control right now. But in your view, what is the industry itself doing to help or hurt the current situation?
Well, one of the headwinds, without question, is, kind of an overall media war on alcohol. And I'm not trying to say that to be dramatic or to, get all huffing and puffing. But certainly over the last, I think that at least the last 24 months, we've seen a measurable uptick in criticism of alcohol. And certainly some of that hurts beer. But I will say the industry, and when I say this, I really mean everybody. I mean our partners at the Beer Institute, our distributor partners at the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers, but our other supplier groups, including the Wine Institute and the Distilled Spirits Council. We have all worked very closely together to push back on some of the nonsense that's come out, some of the pseudoscience from the activist researchers, as we've watched them try to influence the U.S. dietary guidelines. We are still expecting those to be published sometime between now and the end of the year, certainly. This has been, I think we've all been kind of like expectant parents waiting for this to be published. But nonetheless, I think there's been some great work done, and Congress certainly gets some credit as it relates to pushing back on some of these activist research pieces that are not only are they not helpful, they're not factual. They're not rooted in science. They're not rooted in any kind of sound peer-reviewed policy. They're rooted in activism, and they're designed to drive an outcome. I was real disappointed to see one of those groups just this week send out a post on X that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. And I just think that flies in the face of 45 years of alcohol research, and it's just not accurate. It's not true. We know that moderate consumption can be part of an active lifestyle, and we know that when we start looking at some of the problems that are ailing society, like a lack of socialization, like loneliness, like people that were impacted by the pandemic 5 years ago that lost the ability to come together, alcohol can play a role in revitalizing humanity. And that's a difficult thing to talk about, but I think the data increasingly is showing that alcohol has a really important role when it comes to your mental health and your social social wellness.
I have 2 points to make about that. Number one, the J curve is real. It's undeniable. There's, meaning that a moderate level of alcohol decreases your overall mortalization, whatever, death rate, let's call it. That's undeniable. When I did research on it earlier in the spring, I put out an article because I did a little bit of research, and these are the same people who came after tobacco. So, these are career people. These are their careers. So, you kind of can't blame them. They go where the money is and where the grants are. Sure. So fine, whatever. But, at some point, the truth, I think, will come out that moderate level, it's not only no safe level, but also, like you just pointed out, the socialization thing, there's a mental health angle to this. Moderate drinking does grease the rails of socialization, as we all know. I know that I couldn't talk to girls without a beer or two in me back in the day. And I'm starting to get off on a tangent, but yeah, what would you say? And here's my question to you. So Jim Cook has been kind of vocal about the fact that he believes that the big brewers, and kind of particularly AB, their lack of funding for counter research in recent years has left a hole, and that's why these activist anti-alcohol people have been able to go and fill it. What do you say about that?
Look, and I've been around that table. Back when some of those decisions were being made and folks were looking at prioritizing things differently. And I think it's really easy for us to go backwards and say coulda, shoulda, woulda. But the reality is we need to focus on the now and what's in the future. And and that's not disagreeing with Jim at all. I just think that that's kind of counterintuitive as it relates to what are we going to do about it now. And I do think as the dietary guidelines get published, I think there may very well be an opportunity for a new narrative. And I don't want to get ahead of that. I think we've all been very disciplined as it relates to work in this. Certainly the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Health and Human Services departments are doing their best to look at all of these issues, and that includes alcohol. But nonetheless, I do think you're going to hear a lot more about socialization. I think you're going to hear a lot more about bringing people together. I think that there is a huge opportunity to talk about some of the positives as it relates to beer, as it relates to being a lower concentrated form of alcohol that can bring people together and can be, that social lubricant that we know it is. And, and yes, we look at some of Gen Z's consumption patterns, and maybe they've been disrupted and interrupted. And certainly health and wellness is on a lot of people's radar screen. But nonetheless, it's going to be not necessarily any of these things. It's going to be all of these things that help get us back on track. I do think that, the whole notion of structural versus cyclical is getting a workout, and that's okay. But I mean, Harry, you've looked at the same data that I have, for our time in the industry, but even going back further. And I really do think that beer specifically and alcohol in general can be part of that, that mental health, fitness, all the things that you need to have, to live a good life.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Germans drink it for breakfast, and they're great engineers
I,
over there, I hear.
I thought we'd rip off the Florida orange growers and say beer, it's not just for breakfast anymore.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, you know what's funny? I did on my own research, do your own research, as they say, right? And most of the companies that have the highest per capita levels, they tend to live longer, right? I mean, not always, but if you look at the general trend in real life, how people are actually living instead of something in a laboratory and crunching the data, it looks like moderate drinking tends to be better for your longevity. But I expect the media alignment to continue, but I will never cease to be amazed how, say, the New York Times will run a headline on the front page saying no safe level, and then on page 7 there's 10 cocktail recipes. Okay,
Right.
like what does that
Yeah.
say? It never
Yeah.
ceases to amaze me.
Well, and you guys know this, so much of the media is digital, and it's about eyeballs and it's about
Yeah,
clicks.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they're saying whatever they can so that you can move on to the story, and then there's no there. So, I think I've seen it improve. I've seen it get less bad. I've seen, as we're navigating these government activities, I like the work that's being done. I also like the way that the industry is working together, and we want to build on that. I think there's a hope that and we're going to be competitive, and we're absolutely going to mix it up, and that's okay. But when it comes to kind of defending alcohol, we want to be looking at this big picture. And the other thing is, the whole notion of no and low is really important.
Mhm.
Beer is well positioned to deal with that. We've watched that with Athletic Brewing. We've watched that with Heineken 0.0. We've watched that with a number of other products that have been introduced and that are out there that taste better than they've ever tasted, and they give people that enjoyment and part of that ritual, and they allow folks that don't want to drink alcohol to drink beer.
Yeah.
And you know what? We got a place at the bar for them. So come on and join us.
Craig, I do have to ask you at this point, talking about challenges, I got to ask you about hemp, of course. A lot of your
Sure.
members carry it. Yeah. I mean, has NBWA evolved its position at all or taken a position? Because I guess you really haven't, right?
Well, I would push back on that because I think we've been pretty consistent. Starting over a dozen years ago, our stated position was we did not want to see the discussion around marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it, deregulation, legalization impact the alcohol regulations, and that continues to be front and center to what it is that we do. That maybe has guided our lack of engagement on some of the four corners of the hemp issue, and where we largely have been, deferring to the states and to our members. The second thing that we talked about was the whole notion of we wanted federal clarity, and we continue to ask for that. We continue to ask for that when it comes to Congress, who's dealing with this at the Ag Committee and at the Ag Approps Committee level. We've asked the FDA for that. We've asked TTB for that. We've asked every alphabet soup agency, the DEA, anybody that you can think of, we've asked for that. And we've also been clear, kind of the third leg of the stool is that if you're going to sell these products in alcohol channels, you need to regulate them like alcohol. And there's been some success in that position. We saw a handful of states this year that passed what I think are pretty good beginning regulations on hemp products. They include a concentration cap. Obviously, they include age gating, which really isn't regulation. That goes without saying. But they've put into place some of the fundamental alcohol principles that I think we can build on as it relates to these products. So I think we've been pretty clear But our members they're not united. They're not completely aligned around this. I talked to one of our members recently who is selling the product in their markets. And, I ran them through this and they said, I think you guys are absolutely doing the right thing. I participate in NBWA to advance beer in the 3-tier system. This is different. And I was pleasantly surprised, but this member understood our position. There's some that would love to see us push all the chips to the middle of the table and, really go to war for this product. But there are a whole bunch of things that we've got to consider about what does this mean, as it relates to hemp regulation. But, the whole idea of having sound policy. I mean, I'll pick on a state. I thought that the Texas executive order is a step in the wrong direction. I do not think that went nearly far enough. And I know what a difficult slog this was in the Texas legislature. Nobody could have predicted that it broke the way that it did with, the ban, quote unquote, running through the legislature so clearly, the governor's veto, the Texas floods, which you can't ignore, and you can't ignore the back and forth of the political stuff, redistricting, all that got in the way. But the net result is that Texas is going to remain unregulated, and it's going to remain a business. There's 8,000 retailers selling hemp. And remember, when we talk about hemp, we're not just talking about hemp beverages. That's a lane in this product. And so we're talking about, the whole notion of THC and combustible hemp, which is flower marijuana. And the Center for Alcohol Policy did a great survey that they have shared, and Americans don't understand this. I'll also tell you, policymakers don't understand it. So it's a freaking mess.
It is such a mess. And, in a perfect world, and this is just Harry talking, in a perfect world, they would cordon off hemp beverages from the rest of the edibles and smokables, and put it under the ABCs in each state. You already have the infrastructure there. You already have the police actions. All the regulate. It would be so easy just to treat it like a beer, wine, or spirit and tax it like that, and then deal with the edibles and all that other stuff through dispensary type things. It makes sense to me, and I think that's what I would say most wholesalers would agree with that. Not all, though, like you said, not all. There's some that are, no, let's ban it, because we do have to acknowledge that the FDA still has not approved this to be in a beverage or food, and so it's still technically illegal.
That's right. It's not GROS under the FDA.
Right.
And
generally recognized as safe is what GROS means.
This is not easy. It's not simple. And remember, Congress has been wrestling. Colorado went green in 2012 for adult cannabis usage. The dispensary model first appeared there. 13 years later, Congress has not definitively done a thing. They haven't addressed bankability. They haven't addressed deductibility. They haven't put forward any kind of a regulatory framework. Cannabis remains a Schedule I prohibited product. And so, the whole notion of that this is easy is that it's just not. And I will say, we talk to members of Congress every day, and there is a wide disagreement around how they feel about this. And some think, low concentration, low milligram, cap it, that's fine, put it in the alcohol channels, blah, blah. Some people continue to think this is the absolute worst thing ever. And, we've got to work with everybody. And we've got all these other issues that are really important to the future of beer distribution in the country. And we've got to tend to those two at the same time. Also, there I go again, both and.
Right. Well, I find it makes me lazy, and I don't need things making me more lazy than I already am. So I've actually cut back on my D9 beverages.
On your consumption. Oh, okay.
But don't, that doesn't mean don't quit sending it to me, guys. So you have my address.
I was gonna say, I thought I saw some orders come through.
Yeah. Yeah. Willie Nelson's shot. I can't keep Jordan out of the bottle on that one.
But
He's
Yeah,
always,
Harry just pours it up for me.
yeah. Well, we're at 40 minutes. So guys, do we have anything else for Craig, or Craig, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Okay, Craig. So final. Harry knows I always have to have a final.
final. Always have to have a last. Sure.
That's right. So I do have to ask you about there was a letter that the BA sent to the DOJ last week as part of DOJ's request for information on state laws. And I believe they took state franchise laws to task, among other things. And of course, I'm sure you have words to say about that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. If you're a Seinfeld fan, you're familiar with the term Festivus, which is the airing of the grievances. And I read that letter. It's 5 pages. Not a lot of new complaints, but they're fresh for sure. So that's their perspective. What was interesting to me, and I've known Mark Serini for over 20 years. I mean, he's a great lawyer. He's worked for suppliers. He's worked for small brewers. He's worked for liquor companies. He's done some work for wholesalers. Over the years, all those kinds of things. I was surprised that Mark wrote a 5-page letter about state laws and he never mentioned the 21st Amendment. And that to me is just it's just a big gap as it relates to the subject at hand. We're in the process of finalizing our comments, and they may have already been finalized, but just the same, I think I was disappointed, but not surprised. I do think that the whole industry is at a really important kind of crossroads. And it's funny, I was talking to a couple of craft brewers recently who were aware of this, and I just got the feeling from them, gosh, do we really want to go back down this road? I'm hopeful that we can continue to work together, focus on the things that unite us. The business is absolutely terrible right now, but this is the kind of thing that makes every distributor in America dig in deep. And other suppliers' actions also remind every distributor why franchise laws are such an important part of the business. And I think Mark's letter speaks for itself. I think our letter will speak for itself, and it is what it is. But just the same convention, looking forward to seeing all of our partners and friends having some robust discussions.
Absolutely. And on that note of being together, I want a quick plug for our BBD/3-tier happy hour, October 13th, 5 to 6:30 at the Apostrophe Bar. Be there. So.
Well, and if you want free beer on the Beer Business Daily Platinum American Express card and/or Don's Amex card, depending on who's at the bar last. That's typically how it goes.
Right. Yeah.
So,
very organized.
Yeah. Well, Craig, thank you so much for being on BeerNet Radio. We always enjoy having you here, and thank you for those insights. And just one more little plug. Go to NBWA.org and get your ticket. This is the premier. It's really the must. I don't think I've ever missed in 30 years. I mean, it's kind of the must. Unless I have pneumonia or something, I'm going to be there. Which is,
I remember you walking. It was probably an early version of COVID, but I was like, God, I don't think he's going to make it through this meeting.
Yeah, that's been a couple of meetings actually, Craig, for
I'm
different reasons. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, listen. Have a great week, and we'll see you again next week on BeerNet Radio. And
I think clarification wise, don't be bashful or shy. Thank you all. Really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah.
See you soon, Craig.
All right. Take care.
Guys. Cheers, man. Bye-bye.